Okay, you have no questions, and that doesn't matter because there is so much more to tell you that we just continue. The 5 great teachings of the Stoics I will give you now. First of all, what is the cosmos? What is the great whole, the all? What is that? And the second teaching that is very important in the Stoic philosophy is how the universe is born. And that goes from in to outward, and I explain it to you in a few minutes. And then, not only that the universe is born, but the universe is reborn. That is the Stoic term palingenesis. Genesis is the birth process, and the palingenesis means that the Stoics had a teaching, and they were quite unique in that, because they were so much more clear than Socrates, who also said that, but not so clear. And that is palin is again, so it is being born again. And the consequences of the idea that you are born again in next lives is immense. And then the third teaching is the krasis dialou, that is the intermingling of all beings, that all beings are points on the cross point of the threads, the lines of an immense living web of life. And then the fourth is the fact that the Stoic philosopher said, whatever happens, reason, and especially nous, that is our higher ability to think higher things, ideas, and so on, that is central. That is what we really are. And then the fifth is, especially for this evening, happiness, eudaimonia. Why is that important? Because this is a lecture about how to keep your inner balance, how to keep your happiness in situations where ordinary you would have been very sad. So the suffering, to overcome your suffering in the world, is happiness, eudaimonia. And that is in fact the soul of the lecture tonight. 5 ideas. What is the cosmos and what is your place in the cosmos? How a universe is born, how a universe dies, and how a universe is reborn. And the third idea is that in that one immense web of life, all living entities are connected. And then the fact that in your life, reason, nous, is central. And how can you find eudaimonia? 5 things. And I hope, at least, for I gave this lecture in Dutch as well, and then I could only do 1, 2, and 5, and 3 and 4, I had no time, but my happiness is in the fact that I can have a study meeting with you next Sunday. So in that study meeting, we can talk further about 3 and 4, of course. Let us look at the first teaching. What is the all? What is that? In the late Stoa, Marcus Aurelius had a very good description of it, and I read it for you. He says, constantly regard the universe as one living being, having one substance and one soul, and observe how all existing things are joint causes of all things that come into existence, and how intertwined in the fabric is the thread, and how closely woven the web. Now, the first sentence is the most important for you. That is, constantly regard the cosmos, the universe, as one living being. That, friends, is unique. That means that whatever you see through your telescope or in other ways around you is a living entity, is a living organism. And when you see the cosmos as a living organism with a living soul and a living substance, you see the logos part, the soul, the inner part, and the substance, the outer part, then you will change your whole vision of life. What is the question people asked the Stoics? That is, what is God? And the answer, the Stoic answer is, what is God not? In other words, there is nothing that is not God. And they do not use so much the word Theos, God, but they call it Zeus. You know, Zeus, that a little bit negative person on the Olympus. Yes, in the stories of Homer, it is not such a wise personage, and that is not the Zeus of the Stoics. The Stoics talk about Zeus as Zeus agnostos. That means the Zeus that cannot be known. So that cannot be the one on the Olympus who is quarreling with Hera, his wife, and who is punishing heroes and his children, who is, how must I say that, murdering his father. And that is not the Zeus of the Stoics. The Zeus of the Stoics is in fact the heart of the universe. The heart of the universe. And that is a wonderful term to work from. Why? Because the heart of the universe, you cannot glue hands and feet, and not temperament and no actions. The heart of the universe is a very abstract, mystical term that is so much better than God and Zeus and so on. Keep that in mind. That makes it so much easier for you. Cleanthes, the successor of Zeno, made a hymn, and I really advise you to find that hymn on internet. And I do the first two sentences of it. But first, Cleanthes said, Zeus is all that is. Whatever you see, or know, or sense, or feel is Zeus. Zeus is all within and all without. So, all within you and all without you. That means that all your fellow human beings, which you see without you, are Zeus. And every feeling, sense, or whatever you have within yourself is also Zeus. And in the hymn, Cleanthes says, most honored of immortals, many named one, ever omnipotent, Zeus, prime mover of nature, steering all things by your law, greetings. That is how the hymn starts. And then the first sentence, for we thine offspring are. We are rays from the heart of the universe. We are children of Zeus. And that means that we, in fact, are Zeus. That within us there is a part of us that is the heart of the universe. And that idea, do not believe that, but think about it. Think about deeply, and then suddenly, when you recognize that within yourself, yes, these are no ideas you read from a book. You have to find it within yourself that you are in fact divine. And when you discover that within yourself, then something happens. And can you translate that to a practical attitude in your life? Yes, you can. And now Etty Hillesum tells us how she found that. And we can learn from her. Listen. There is a really deep well inside me. And in it dwells God. Sometimes I am there too. But more often, stones and grit block the well. And God is buried beneath. Then he must be dug out again. You hear? She has to work hard to find that inner divine part of herself. She doesn't pray or offer or pay money or whatever. She fights to find it. I imagine that there are people who pray with their eyes turned heavenward. They seek God outside themselves. And there are those who bow their head and bury it in their hands. I think that these seek God inside. And she chooses for that second possibility to seek God inside her. And a technical philosophical term is that there is an immanent God. Zeus, the heart of the universe, is within you. You don't have to seek outside of you. It is within you. You are already that. And that is a very deep thought to start with, to find inner peace in turbulent times. For what are the conclusions from that? I made 6 conclusions, and I help you with that. First of all, God is within us and not outside us. We are connected to the heart of the universe, and the first step to know that divine center within ourselves is our conscience. That is our first feeling and sensing that within ourselves there is something. Try it. Don't believe me. Try it out. And the second conclusion is that we are Zeus. That every ray from the heart of the universe is that heart of the universe itself. We are Zeus. We are an expression of Zeus. We are a part of Zeus. Deep within ourselves, we are divine. And therefore, we have within ourselves divine dignity. We are gods in embryo. And that makes us so much more than we often think we are. And when you think about that, then you find within yourself that dignity, that integrity, that inner balance, that being an example and support for others. Those are things based on the fact that you know that within yourself there is something divine. You are not such a speck of dust that after 70 or 80 years vanishes from this world and is never seen again. You are divine. You are the heart of the universe. So important. And because we are part of Thuis, we have a responsibility for other parts of Thuis. So when you do not look inward, but you look outward, then you see other parts of Thuis, other rays from the heart of the universe, and you are responsible for that, because you are in your heart, the heart of the universe. So that gives responsibility. And then you see that everyone outside you, that you observe and you meet and you see that every other living being is unique. We are all parts of Thuis, but we all are different parts of Thuis. And only the combination of all those innumerable living beings makes the whole cosmos. And not one of us can be missed in that gigantic, complete whole. And therefore, it is not possible to crush your fellow human beings, to kill someone, not even to kill a fly, because every entity has its place and responsibility in Buddhic and Hindu terms. We all have our svabhava and our dharma, if you understand those terms better. And when you see that, when you realize that, when you look to your family members, your friends, your colleagues, your enemies, then you start to have mutual respect for all the other expressions of life in that great whole. And the Stoa says, when you look at all the other living beings in that light, then you start to sense unity. First of all, with the human beings around you. And the next step, if you have that feeling of unity in a larger scale, you are one with humanity. And after that, if you grow and grow in that sense of unity, you feel that sense of unity with all living beings, with all life. And that, friends, is the basis of being at peace. Because you recognize and respect from your sense of oneness all the different, how do you say that, parts of the diamond. Wat is een facet, Erwin?
Facets.
Facets. So, it's easy, it is the same in both languages. All the innumerable facets of the diamond, you recognize it as yourself. Sense of oneness. You see how important it is to think over deeply about on this first teaching of the Stoa. The second teaching, that is how a universe is born. And therefore, I take you with me to that heart of the universe, Zeus, from which you all are the children. From that heart of the universe, at a certain moment, there is an exhalation. And I call it an exhalation because the process of breathing is in that. And that is the same as in Hinduism and Buddhism. There it is called the exhalation of Brahma. And now we call it the same in the Stoic terms, we call it Zeus. And from Zeus there is a breath. And in Greek it is pneuma. And that pneuma, from that pneuma there streams life. And that streams in phases. And the technical term in Stoicism is a slackening of tension. So the highest tension is the level of consciousness nearest to the heart of the universe, pneuma. And when it slackens, that is the word, slackens its tension, then a new element is streaming out. And that is the element of fire. And from the element of fire, by slackening tension, there comes the element of air. And from the element of air, by slackening of tension, comes the element of water. And from the element of water, there comes the element of earth. And those four elements, fire, air, water and earth, are not the fire, air and water and earth we know on earth. That is only a very, very low projection of that. No, the real element of fire and the real element of air, for instance, is so much higher in the whole structure of the universe than our water and fire and so on. Never confound that. Never say the element of fire is our fire. That isn't true. And I try to explain that to you. But first, when that exhalation stops, because all the elements are there, then all the living beings who live in those elements are starting to grow and to express themselves and to learn their lessons and to develop themselves. Develop the Zeus part within themselves. And at a certain time in a cycle, then from Zeus there starts an inhalation. And the element of earth is inhaled in that of water, and then in that of air, and that in fire, and from the pneuma it vanishes again in the heart of the universe. And that is, in fact, how a universe is born and dies again. It's not only being born, but it is inhaled back again. And now the Stoics say something that is very important for you. You have, after pneuma, the elements fire and air. And those elements are the elements where the gods and the humans are living, are functioning. And then the element water and earth are the two elements where the lower beings are living. The animals, the plants, the minerals, and so on, and all other lower entities are living in the lower two elements. And humans and gods live in the higher elements, fire and air. In fact, that is the same as thinking with your mind and functioning with your heart. Those two things you have within yourself, those are happening on those higher levels of consciousness. That is where you really are human. And on the lower two elements, the water and the earth, there the animals live. And what is the specialty of an animal? An animal develops his instinct. And that happens on the watery element. There are the passions, the emotions, the instinctive reactions, and the earth element is in fact the lowest, where the forms are. But when you follow our lectures more often, then you know that your body isn't you, that your emotions and passions are not you. Those are the two parts of your instrument that is family of the animal kingdom. And the real you is the thinking you. So the real listener to this lecture is not sitting in his chair, but is very active in that element of air, and hopefully when compassion comes in, also the element of fire. So now you understand why the Stoics said that when you are in emotional disturbance, there is only one thing you have to do. That is concentrating on your reason, on your nous, your higher form of thinking. And at the same time, you are on the level of air and fire, those elements. And that is something you can recognize for yourself. For everyone who is afraid, everyone who has fear, typically an emotion of the lower two elements, having fear. You see it in animals, and you see how animals instinctively react on that. But we have our mind. We have the possibility to raise ourselves above that level and to start thinking and try it out. Try it out once, and you will discover that your fear stops haunting you from 1 second to the other. Your fear vanishes totally when you keep your heart and mind on those higher levels. Because you are able as a human being to choose in which element you want to function. And this is, yes, I want to have some conclusions. And one of them is already said. One conclusion is that you have the power and the ability to choose between the four elements. And a real human being chooses for the upper two. And that means that you have free will, and there's Erwin, listen to his lecture about free will, and then you understand everything about free will. You have the free will to not being a victim anymore, but being a leader of your life in whatever circumstances, even the worst ones. For that is the talent of those later Stoic philosophers in the most horrific circumstances. 176 emperors, of which 95 are murdered. Half of them are murdered. And that society, in that society, the later Stoics were able to remain above that hopelessly degenerated level. And the last conclusion I want to give you is that you are invincible. People cannot affect you. People cannot affect you as a soul. They only can affect your circumstances. But circumstances is the element earth, and for partly also water. And people can do horrible things. They can bomb your city. They can kill all your family. But you are a soul, and you are able to not be a victim, but to be a leader of your own life. Those conclusions I want to give to you. And perhaps it's now time for questions. Welcome back. And your questions are answered now. Erin.
Yes, there are a few questions. I think two that are related. The first one is, according to you, is God the same as the all? And the other one is, can you equate Zeus with the first principle from the secret doctrine? So I think they might be related.
Okay, good question. God, the all, and Zeus are terms, are names. But we have to look at the ideas. And when Cleanthes made his hymn to Zeus, he also, in that same hymn, he talks about theos and about theory. So God, Greek for God, and Greek for gods. And perhaps it's good to realize that those terms are no absolutes, that we have to try to understand the meaning behind it. For I already gave you the example that the Zeus of Homer was not as highly developed as the Zeus of Cleanthes. Cleanthes meant a much more mystical, deeper layer within ourselves and within the cosmos. When the cosmos is a living organism, as Marcus Aurelius says, that means that there is a series of layers in which you can go deeper and deeper and deeper up to infinity. And then you come in the idea of what you find in the proem of the secret doctrine of Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, where she tries to give us the idea of something behind everything we can understand, and that behind is not something you can name, without a name, and which you cannot think about. It is unthinkable because it is further beyond our limitations of our thinking. And in that light, you can say that Zeus, God, And the first principle, the parabrahman, the first omnipresent, infinite, boundless, and immovable, immutable principle, that is exactly what God and Zeus meant to express. So every time you think of Zeus or the heart of the universe as something, then you know that beyond that there is more. And the real idea about it is that you focus on beyond. That is the best way to understand Zeus in the context of how the Stoics, the original Stoics, meant it to be. And is there more in this question?
If there is more needed, I suppose the questioners will ask more.
Yes.
More. I guess this is a fitting answer. So the next question is, what is the main difference between the Stoa and Theosophy, or is there no big difference?
Very glad that you gave that question, because it shows me that my explanation was not, how must I say, not clear enough. I do it again here. You see that Zeno was inspired by Socrates. You see the branch to the stem, and then Socrates, Plato, was inspired by Pythagoras. And Pythagoras was inspired by Egyptian and Asian wise teachers. And those wise teachers learned their wisdom from earlier wise teachers. And these learned, and so on, and so on, and so on. In Greece, it is called the golden chain of teachers, the golden chain of Hermes. And that is the line that goes to the moment in history, in the very, very far history of this living planet, that the average human being started from a dreaming situation, started to awaken their mind. From that moment on, teachers have taught the very young humanity, the child humanity, all the wisdom they could teach them. And that is the universal Theosophia. For that same teaching was taught worldwide. There were no different branches and schools. We were, in fact, there was only one little sapling that came out of the roots of wisdom, and that was one. Worldwide, there was only one Theosophia, and only later there came all the branches and the twigs and leaves that fell into the ground and so on. So the Stoa is one of the little branches, and the tree, that is the Theosophia. Is that the wisdom you hear from the speakers of the Theosophical Society? No. We are only able to give you a little bit more in a little bit clearer context, but it would be ridiculous to think that we know the whole universal Theosophia. The only thing in our organization we can do is to help you to think deeper within yourself and finding more of that one wisdom. And one of the things our members did was taking all the world religions and philosophy and see whether the same truth could be found in all religions. And that was true. They were surprised themselves to find the same thing in Greek mysticism and in the Islam and in the South American Inca wisdom, for instance. It is the same basis, only dressed in different forms of explaining. In the same way as this lecture is different from the lecture of 2 weeks ago when another speaker talked to you. So everyone has his own way of expressing things. And that is all the twigs of the same stem, of the same roots. That is the Theosophia. I hope this is enough. So in its heart, the Stoa is Theosophia.
Okay, thank you. Next question is, can you also say something about the fifth element, ether?
Fifth element, hooray! I try to keep it simple with four, for that is the most common way of expressing it in Stoicism, but the fifth element we have to deal with because you asked it. There is a fifth element, and there is a sixth element, and there is a seventh element, and there is an eighth, a ninth, a 10th, an 11th, and 12th element, and so on. Every time a step deeper in the direction of the heart of the universe, and that heart is nowhere. That is every time a step deeper. And that means that ether, the quintessence, the fifth element, is one step more in the direction of pneuma, and one step more in the direction of Zeus and the heart of the universe. But it is not the only step. I only gave you the first four because these you can use to keep your balance in difficult times. And the quintessence, the fifth element, ether, is also there. And also the sixth and seventh, but I already told you that. I hope you are not disappointed, and I hope it will be a joy for you to realize that you will never reach an absolute end. Wonderful, you will always grow further. So.
And the final question, I guess you already mentioned a bit, but maybe the questioner wants to hear some more. Is Seneca also a Stoic?
Yes. Seneca, the three great Stoics in the later Roman time is Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus. In what way you pronounce it, I hope you understand it. Seneca wrote many letters and many teachings to his students, and one of them is Researches into Nature. And that 100-page long dissertation is translated by Gottfried de Perrucker, who used his theosophical background, knowledge and wisdom to just choose the right words to translate Seneca. And I can already give you a hint. You can find that translation on our website. You can download it for free. It is on our website now for 2 weeks, so it's very fresh. And if you download it and you read it, then you ask yourself, what on earth am I reading? For Seneca talks about rainbows, about earthquakes, about things like that. Yes, what you see in the weather forecast, storms. He had a whole chapter on storms. And then you think, is that something I am interested in when I try to find the wisdom of the world? And it depends how you read that book of Seneca. For he apparently taught about weather things, but that isn't true. He talks apparently, seemingly, about things of this element earth. But in fact what he does is talking about the higher consciousnesses in those higher elements, the gods, the human beings in fire and air, and everything what flows out of the element fire and air into water and earth, everything that flows out of it, that is, how must I say that? A radiation, een afspiegeling. Oh, that is a difficult. A reflection, that is the word. A reflection of what happens in the higher elements. So if Seneca talks about a rainbow, you have to translate that within yourself to spiritual things. And then you really read the Theosophia, the esoteric explanation of many important things. And that is the reason why Gottfried Brugger translated it for his students, to see what happens in this planet with earthquakes and waves and storms and so on. Translate it into spiritual things, translate it to what the gods and human beings do. And then you understand Seneca. He is a wonderful writer. I do hope you read more about him. You find him on internet and we help you finding it. So come to our study meeting next week and we can exchange ideas. I hope this is this answer is.
I suppose so. Yeah.
Yes. If it's not, if you want to know more, ask your question and we continue.
Okay, those were the questions for now.
These are the questions. Then we start the next part of our lecture. I already told you about what is